family. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. And like we always do with our Sunday sessions, I like to preface it with a statement or a thesis while we wait for everybody to get in and get settled in. This is going to be an open discussion, but I always like to get started by laying the foundation and, kind of clarifying and putting into context what it is we're going to be talking about. So there are a few definitions that we need to cover before we start going in on this topic. We need to return to the definition of spirit, return to the definition of religion, return to the definition and concept of soul. Just out of curiosity, do we have any atheists on the line? You don't have to say your name, just say right here.
Right here.
Can you define atheist?
Right here.
All right, so we got one.
Can you define atheist?
Yeah, absolutely. So an atheist is someone who does not believe in a god or gods, right? An agnostic is someone who does believe in a god or gods, but doesn't believe in a particular religion. So you don't have a religious preference, is agnostic.
Dang, I guess I'm agnostic.
So then everybody starts speaking up. All right, do I have any Christians on the line? Let me just hear you say right here. We got 0 Christians on the line. We have any Muslims on the line? Let me hear you say right here. No Christians, no Muslims. So the majority of y'all are either atheists or agnostic. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
I don't identify with anything. I'm just me.
True indeed.
That's my category. I'm just me too.
I'm with the queen. I don't identify with anything.
True indeed. True indeed. So right now, Christianity is the dominant pattern of religious thought generated by white supremacy. We know that. All right, that's beyond debate. Is there anybody? Well, I'm not even going to ask that because then we'll get into a debate. But that is beyond debate, family. The jury is out on. The jury is no longer out on that. We have all the proof that we need. We know that Christianity was engineered as we know it in its current form by white supremacists. Originally, they used it to subjugate their own people. I think that's a point that's important to make. Everything that has been done to us, they perfected on themselves. All right? And I'm not going to belabor that point. It's absolutely critical to the white supremacist system of religion, all right, that they formulate a white man as the son of God. Why? Because the brain functions most fundamentally on logic circuits. At deep unconscious levels, it automatically computes that God, the Father, must be a white male since the so-called son of God is white, painted white, right? Thus, any person programmed to accept the Christian religion, whether conscious of it or not, has the image and concept of God as a white man in the logic network of his or her brain. Now, with the white man as God, the non-white global collective would then be obedient to the white man always. That's coming from Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's book, The ISIS Papers. So what all that means is to be black and to accept consciously or unconsciously an image of God as a white man is the highest form of self-negation and a lack of self-respect under the specific conditions of white domination. In other words, you see the most supreme being in the universe as being that of your oppressor. Therefore, it's easy to understand how the enemy became the deity, as Baba Ashra Kwesi often says. Now, in order for us to fix this problem and in the process fix our own miseducation, fix the conditions of our people, we've got to break those logic circuits, right? And that's when the concept of black liberation can become a reality. So that's where most of you find yourselves, family. Let me just wrap all that up with this statement. As you begin to come into consciousness, you may leave Christianity, and then you'll embark on a quest for either religions or spiritual philosophies to replace Christianity. And that's natural for you all as individuals. When a person realizes the truth, and that truth is that Christianity was used as a tool to spread and maintain white supremacy, then the Christian identity that you have been holding on to for so long is shattered. And along with that, your concept of God is shattered. Now, if the concept of God is removed, upon whom do you lean, especially if you're feeling oppressed, depressed, and overwhelmed? If there's nothing or no one to provide support, then you collapse and disintegrate on your own. All right? So what we're going to talk about is we're really briefly going to discuss Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Then we're going to talk about innovative spiritual systems, right? So these are the spiritual systems that you have forgot, the spiritual systems that Christianity, Islam, and Judaism were derived from or stole from. And hopefully we can get some of you all to return to your true African self upon which rests the soul, or I'm sorry, upon which the soul rests. And that's coming from Dr. Naim Akbar's book, Know Thyself. All right? So before we get started, let me ask you all this, family. Who can give us a good working definition of the word spirit before I put the definitions out there? Just state your name, where you're calling from, and give us what you think the spirit is. Let's set some definitions.
Me, this is Jane.
Peace.
Spirit is simply the mother, the father, the everything God. It is the very energy, the very air that we breathe. It is not made a religion. It is not sex orientated. It is the energy, the very breath that you breathe.
Anybody want to add on to that, family?
Yeah, this is Kwame in Atlanta. Can I chime in?
Go right ahead, family. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I think there's a correlation of why we use spirits to label things like liquor or stimulants, because it has to do with the mind. So I think a person's spirit ultimately has to do with their frame of mind, how they view things, how they think. It's all in your brain, your perception of your environment, which also relates to how you behave towards the people and the things that are surrounding you. So person's spirit is essentially their actions, what they see, and how they react towards what they see. That's my brief definition of what spirit is.
Indeed.
I'd like to.
Anybody? Please come on in here, Queen.
To me, spirit is the sustaining energy that causes all things in our universal order to move, to live, to evolve, to move around. And that spirit is what keeps us all who we are, our energy, our breaths, our lives, and all that we encounter. It's the thing that keeps the universe moving.
If I may interject, this is Donald McKinney, Louisville, Kentucky, member number 4.
What's going on? What's going on, family?
What's up, brother? How you doing now? How's everybody doing this evening? I would like to say I agree with everything everybody's saying, and basically I feel that spirit is also consciousness. Basically, consciousness. When you're, as you speak right now, you hear me speak, you're consciously connected with me, listening to me, and we're all just consciously connected. And the mind, your mentality, how you think, what everybody said, I agree with everything everybody said, but consciousness.
Oh, indeed. All right, family. Well, with that being said, we kind of got a working definition of spirit. Let me ask you all this. What is the definition of soul, and what's the difference between your spirit and your soul?
Donald McKinney, may I interject?
Please do. Come on in here, King.
Okay. Well, I would have to say emotions. Your soul is, your soul can change.
So you think the soul is something that can change?
Yeah, depending on, I think, well, no. I have to say that would be more of your, I have to say that would be more of your consciousness, because your consciousness your thoughts change all the time, your emotions, so I would say it's more consciousness. But your soul is that, you know what, that's a good question.
Yeah. Who
I'd
wants
like
to
to
add on, family? Please do. Come on in here, Queen. State your name and where you're calling from.
This is Epriama Kwan in Louisiana.
Jeez.
To me, the soul is your self-identity, that dot, that part of the whole of spirituality that is in total existence, the source. Your soul is your specific part of that, and it's also spirit. I call it soul spirit when I'm speaking to the younger. That it's that specific part of yourself that you have been given. And until that part, that soul part of your living being becomes, I don't even know what to call that, purified as the part, as an equal part to the spirit itself, the original spirit itself, you cannot unite with that spirit. But when you do, it becomes one with the all of spirituality, all of creativity, all of the spirit of the Creator.
I
the Holy One.
Sister, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
I still agree with Sister. This is Jane again. See, to me, soul is what carries on. The job of the soul is to learn the good, the bad, and the evil, and to get to the dimensions that we have to go through the dimensions we have to go through in order to get back to the Supreme, to the Creator. And so that's the job of the soul, to learn the good, the bad, the ugly, and to ultimately get to, I guess, what some of the Indians call nirvana, back to the source.
I think this Lerone in Oregon, everybody, what's up? I think that the soul. When I think of soul, I think of like the history of my personal ancestors. Like, we all have ancestors, but I think the soul is the history of my personal ancestors, and it has stuff like how the brother said, your emotions, and I would say like your temperament, the things that you like, the things that come natural to it, your talents. I think all that stuff stems from your soul, and I think that the difference is that your spirit is your connectedness, and more importantly, your relationship with the universe. And when I say the universe, I literally mean everything from plants to the sky, to other people, to other animals. So, yeah, when I think of soul, I think of like how you would just get a premonition, or you would just get a feeling like, wow, I feel like I'm really supposed to be this personal trainer or whatever, because that's from your I think the sister just said, like, it's like a history. I don't know how she said, I think it was Sister Jane said that it's like a history, and I do believe that like literally all the strength, like some of us are warriors, some of us are healers, some of us are teachers. I think that's part of your soul, and that comes from your ancestry, even the ones we don't know, right? But that's just my little 2 cents in.
Thank you, bro. You said exactly what I was trying to say.
It takes a village. Let me tell you all that you are all correct in our ancestral sense. All right? So without getting too far ahead in our call, we know that Islam, Christianity, and Judaism came from one source. That one source was Kemet. We did the knowledge on that 2 weeks ago. All right? And we're going to touch more on it later on. We're going to talk about why Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are the dominant forces on the planet right now, and it's not what you think. It's all because of one person, and that man was Cyrus the Great. Kurash is what he's called, but in the Bible he's referred to passively as Cyrus. We're going to touch on that. But if we go back to the source, which is Kemet, right? Kemet developed the most sophisticated and comprehensive spiritual system on the planet up to that time. And we're talking about anywhere from 7,000 to 9,000 years ago, all right? In Kemetology, in Kemetic science, right, in the Kemetic spiritual system, your Kemetic ancestors believed, and if y'all are taking notes, now's a good time to break out your pen and pad, because this is critical. Everybody's right, all right? But we're going to get very specific with this. Your Kemetic ancestors believed that the human soul was made up out of 5 parts. They believed that the human soul consisted of 5 parts, all right? They also believed that the soul was as part of your anatomy, as your arm, your leg, your head, and etc., right? So your soul is an actual part of your anatomy. Now, when I'm sending students through our work study course, we do an exercise where you come into contact with your soul for the first time. Now, I know that sounds kind of antithetical because you're always in contact with your soul. But because of the outside world, because of the process of miseducation that you've undergone, because of the chemicals that you ingest, because of the media, because of other psychographic factors, you become disconnected from your soul, all right? So I send our students through a workshop in order to reconnect them with their souls, which is one of the purposes of meditation. But I digress. 5 parts, okay? The first part of your soul is your heart, okay? In Kemetic science, this is called the, this is called the Jeb. My memory skipped me for just a second. Jeb. It's also sometimes spelled IB or JEB. Now, your heart was the seat of your emotions, your thoughts, and your will. See, family, when we're talking about spirituality, we're not talking about rituals, right? We're not talking about going to church and listening to sermons. When we're talking about spirituality, we're talking about metaphysics. Metaphysics is one of the 5 areas of life that we teach here in United Black America. That consists of everything that makes up who you are that is not physical. That's what metaphysics is. So if y'all are under the impression that metaphysics is talking about the Anunnaki and the alien origins of humanity, that very well may be part of it, right? Because of your connection to the universe. But when we're talking about metaphysics, we're getting practical with it. We're talking about everything that makes up who you are that is not tangible, that I can't put my hands on. And this is important to understand, family, because if we are to understand who we are as a people and redeem our people and overcome this system of white supremacy, we've got to know without a shadow of a doubt who we are. That starts with understanding our soul, not religion, right, but metaphysics. That's knowledge of self. Knowledge of self is who you are, how you came to be, the world around you, and your place in that world. Who you are starts with what we're talking about tonight. So don't think this is mental masturbation, family, and don't think this doesn't have a point. And don't think that by overstanding what we're covering tonight, you're not making an impact on the world around you by making an impact on yourself. You are. I digress again. Let me focus. Your heart, your seat of emotions. This is called the Jeb in Kemetic sciences, all right? These are your emotions, your thoughts, your intentions, and this was the key to the afterlife, family. You all have seen those papyri where there's a heart being weighed on the scales of Mayat, right?
Yes.
That was the Jeb.
Yes.
Your heart comes from your mother. 1 drop of your mother's blood while you are in the womb becomes your heart. This is the link to your past that the Queen Jane out of New York was talking about, right? And then that the kings came in and reinforced. This is your link to the past. That 1 drop of blood that creates your heart, which ultimately becomes the seat of your emotions, your thoughts, your wills, and your intention. The collective experience of 50,000 years in 1 drop of blood. That's the first part of your soul, according to your Kemetic ancestors. The second part of your soul, family, is what's called the Ren, R-E-N. Your Ren is your name. Pause. Your ancestors believed that your name had as much of an impact on your soul as anything else. But the second part of your soul was your Ren, your name. Your ancestors believed that as long as your name was spoken, you would live on. But the implications are far greater when it comes to knowledge of self, family. We talked about this last week and a few weeks ago. If your enemy wants to subjugate you, if the enemy wants to take away your knowledge of self, if the enemy wants to control your narrative, if the enemy wants to remove you from your history, they've got to start by removing your name from you. Think about everything that makes up your name, right? If I say the name Michio, you know I'm talking about a Japanese male, probably, if you speak the Japanese language, right? Xi Jinping, you know that's a Chinese male, right? If I say Naswada and you speak the local language, you know that that's a Gao boy, Gao being old kingdom on the West African coast, right? Kwame, Michael, Brandon, Jose, right? And even Jose is a terrible example. It'd be more like Atahualpa, right? All these things communicate so much to you in one word. I know the language that that person probably speaks. I know the area that that person lives in. I know the history that that person is bringing into the world with them. Names are powerful, family. What we call ourselves matters. Anybody agree or disagree? If you agree, let me hear you say Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe, yeah, you're on it, man.
Ashe.
Ashe.
So indeed, our names are important, and your Kemetic ancestors understood that, and so too did your traditional enemy, which is why when we go back to that movie Roots, we all used to joke about that scene, what's your name? And he kept saying Kunta, Kunta Kinte, right? That was a powerful scene, because what he was doing was he was retaining that 50,000 years of his ancestral history, trying to hold on to it to the point of death. Because without that identity, who are you? I'll tell you who you are. What you see outside of your window right now. A nation of people without a purpose. A lost group of people who are more ready to identify with their oppressors than they are with their own people. because they walk around with names like Brandon, Michael, Robert, Keith, names that have been disassociated from that 50,000 years plus of ancestral history. Look, 50,000 years is all I can prove right now. If you told me to put an artifact in your hand that would measure the period of time that we've been upon this earth, the oldest thing I can give you is 50,000 years with 100% confirmation. But they're digging up things every day that go back 100,000, 200,000, almost 1.2 million years. That's Black history. Moving forward, family, the third part of your soul that your Kemetic ancestors believed in was your shadow. All right? Now, we can get philosophical with this, and we can get into Muata Ashby's interpretation of this. Pause. Is there anybody who's never heard of Baba Muata Ashby?
I haven't.
No, I have not.
Okay. So we got a couple of kings and queens who have not. This is a warrior scholar in our community. He wrote a book called The Book of Coming Forth by Day, which is a proper translation of both the words and intentions of what you mistakenly believe is the Book of the Dead. See, when white folks dug this up and they tried to translate the text using their Greek translations, which were off, you all remember that the Shabaka stone was a stone that they dug up, and it had 3 different translations of the same words. One version was in Kemetic, one version was in an advanced form of Kemetic, and then one version was in Greek. They used that as their method of translation, right? But what they're missing is the engagement of their melanin, because they didn't have enough to engage with those words. Words carry more than just a literal meaning. There's a spiritual connotation. That's neither here nor there. They dug this up. They translated falsely this book of information as the Book of the Dead. They said that this was a book of rituals for dead people. No, family. This is the book of coming into the light, the book of coming forth by day. In other words, the book of enlightenment. A book that's not meant for the dead, but is meant for the living. So Muata Ashby translated that so-called Book of the Dead, and in that he describes the shadow, right, as the wake that you leave behind you, the ripple of your actions on the pool of the universe that spread outwards. Okay? Now, your ancestors called it your shadow because it's always behind you or beneath you, right, depending on the position of the sun. But this is all of the activities that you've engaged in that have affected the world around you. That's part of your soul, which is why when you've done things in the past that you're not proud of, you carry that guilt. Those are the ripples, your shadow, the effects of your intentions. The next part of your soul, according to your Kemetic ancestors, was what we call your Ka. And I think our queen out in Louisiana, Queen, pronounce your name for us again.
Epriamaquan.
Epriamaquan. Our queen Epriamaquan out in Louisiana alluded to this. Your Ka is your vital spark. This is your spirit, the part of you that lives on. And in fact, your Kemetic ancestors had a ritual when you transitioned. They would open up your mouth and they would release your Ka. This is your spirit. And then the final part of your soul, out of those 5 parts that we covered, was your Ba, B-A, or your personality. This is what made you uniquely you, family. This is what your Kemetic ancestors believed separated you from every other person. Now, there are 4 things that unite you with everyone else. Your heart, that one drop of blood that came from your mother, the link to your 50,000 years of ancestral past, the link to every other black man, woman, and child that shares your origins. Your shadow, all right? That's collected because your ripple connects with my ripple, and they create the world around us. Your name passed on to you from, again, 50,000 years of your ancestry that lends to your identity and ultimately lends to your soul. Your Ka, that vital spark, that spirit that lives on beyond you, that unites with one collective universal spirit of all knowing, all being, and all existing in the past, present, and future simultaneously. And then finally, your individual personality or your Ba. Those, family, are the 5 parts of your soul according to your Kemetic ancestors. Now, who's hearing that information for the first time? Let me hear you say right here.
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 The reason you're hearing that for the first time is because in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, which came from these original spiritual systems, they weren't able to comprehend these teachings. They called them the mystery systems. You had one person who came close enough to take something out of Kemet and give to the rest of the world that would benefit them to an extent. That one person we call the lawgiver. Anyone familiar with who I'm talking about?
Moses. No.
I'm talking about Moses. Can anybody do the knowledge on Moses and make that connection for the family?
Is it Moses or Musa?
It is Musa properly. And see, that's the thing. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are all in the same womb, right? They're all in the same womb. So when you hear Musa in Islam, using the Arabic language and the Arabic culture, Arabic is a culture, not a language, right? One is the same. We're also talking about Moses, okay? Moses of the Old Testament of the Bible, Moses of the Torah, the Tanakh, and the, what's the third book? There's the Torah, the Tanakh, and the, come on, family, help me out.
Is the Talmud?
Talmud, absolutely. The Talmud. In Judaism, they're all connected. They're all one and the same. So somebody do the knowledge on Musa. Tell us what you know about him. Tell us what you know about his time in Kemet, and make the connection for us.
Peace, Brother Terrell. Can everybody hear me?
Peace.
Peace.
Yes.
I wouldn't say my knowledge is very extensive, but just a brief overview. He was born in Kemet and was raised in all the ways of the Kemites. So he knew the culture thoroughly. He knew what the principle of Ma'at meant and everything that encompassed that. So that's just my brief spiel on Moses, or Musa, as you would call him.
True indeed. True indeed. Musa was exposed to some of the mystery systems, but this isn't a system that you walk into and walk right out of after 4 years and understand what's written on those scrolls, understand the workings of the soul. In his very brief time in Kemet, being a member of the royal family, he was exposed to just enough to go back to his people, get them to revolt, and create their own religion that would ultimately become Christianity. The only reason why we know who Musa is, the only reason why Judaism survived, which ultimately led to the rise of Christianity and Islam, is because of a man named Cyrus the Great. All right? Cyrus the Great, let me just put this into context real quick for you all, family, before I open up the floor. Cyrus the Great ended up passing on his empire to a man named Cambyses. Cambyses ended up passing on that empire to a man named Darius, and Darius passed on that empire to a man named Xerxes. Now, we all are familiar with Xerxes, but real quick, who is not familiar with Xerxes? Let me hear you say right here.
Right here.
All right.
Here. I'm not familiar with
Right here.
Xerxes was the leader of the Persian Empire, the largest empire at that time, and one of the top 3 largest empires in all of human history as far as we know. All right? He was the bad guy, so to speak, in the movie 300, where the Greeks were made to look like they were some cavalier group of warriors fighting for the future of democracy and quote-unquote white supremacy, in parentheses, footnote, right? And it made it look like they were fighting against these Arab and African hordes of mutants and demon and devil worshippers. Nothing could have been further from the truth. The empire that Xerxes inherited from Darius, and Darius inherited from Cambyses, and Cambyses inherited from Cyrus the Great, otherwise known as Kurash, was one of the most democratic empires in human history. This is important for our discussion tonight, family, because when Cyrus conquered a land, let me take you all back in time. Typically, when you conquer the land, it's exactly what you all would expect, family. People get their heads cut off. They dismantle the government. They stop you from worshiping the gods that you were worshiping, right? Now you're paying tribute in the form of slaves and money to the central empire that just conquered you. Typically, that's what it was like, right? You go into somebody else's crib, you slaughter everybody until they say, okay, we don't need no more of that. And then you move in and you set up shop, and that becomes your crib, all right? Now, what ended up happening under the Cyrus regime was he would move into a land, right? He would threaten them with destruction, But he said you can avoid all this, and you can keep your gods, keep your culture, keep your names, keep everything just the way it is, just as long as you pay tribute to the Central Empire. Now, if you have an army, right, of hundreds of thousands from all over the world representing people who took that deal, you got an army at your doorstep, and they say, you can keep everything that you got, we just want you to pay, right? We want you to pay to play. Or we're going to rape your women, kill your children, slaughter all the men, level your land, sprinkle salt into the field so nothing grows again. You would probably take the other deal, right? Y'all feel me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Follow me, family. Flow with me. This was how Cyrus operated, okay? This is important to our discussion because when Cyrus invaded the land of Judea, Judea was a warlike tribe. We talk in Old Testament. You all know how the Old Testament got down. These worshipers of Yahweh, who was a war god, were slaughtering their neighbors. You all read into the Old Testament about how genocide was the will of God, how they would go from tribe to tribe, slaughtering all the men, women, and children. Now, when Cyrus came in, he conquered Judea, and he conquered all the tribes that Judea was trying to slaughter. This meant they were all part of one empire now, and the slaughter had to stop. But with that, the worshipers of Yahweh changed their tactics. They became what we would consider Jehovah's Witnesses. And they would go from village to village preaching their gospels and spreading their religion, which Cyrus allowed to happen. In fact, Cyrus encouraged it. That meant that the worshipers of Yahweh now had access to the largest empire in the world. That's how Christianity spread. It spread like a disease or a tick on the back of the empire that Cyrus the Great built. Now we know that Christianity came from Judaism, right? So too did Islam. In fact, Islam came in part from Christianity, but it was a changed version of Christianity designed to meet the needs of the Arab people. Pause. This is important, family. When other groups come into contact with a spiritual system that didn't come from them, they change that spiritual system to meet the needs of their people. What I'm telling you all is they took Christianity from you. They changed Christianity to meet, they changed Christianity to meet their needs, the needs of Albions, the needs of other people. And when they captured you, they fed your Christianity right back to you. But it was bastardized. It was literally whitewashed.
Ashe.
It was the spiritual system that people like Moses, the lawgiver, learned in Kemet, gave to his people. They went back up north, changed it, came back down south to Africa, and into what they mistakenly called the New World, which wasn't new because we were already there, here in North America, elsewhere, South America, elsewhere, and fed it right back to you. This brings our conversation full circle, family. All right? So I want to apologize for you all letting me run my mouth for the past 20 minutes, but I wanted to give you all context.
No. Encore. Nigga, I say, man, preach, baby, preach. I love to hear it, baby. You know it. Just talk that talk, baby. Sitting and chill to us.
Well, I want to open up the floor and see where the family's head is at. How do you all feel about what you all were just given in terms of that information, and who has something they want to add?
Well, I'm Donald McKinney, if I may go first, you know what I'm saying, Louisville, Kentucky, member number 4. And I honestly, you know what I'm saying, just want to, you know, reiterate the fact that with that last part you said, you know, that's my son speaking. Hey, baby, it's my 3-month-old. He wanted to get in. Yeah, literally, that last part you reiterated on that the fact that we are, I don't know if you say the word autonomous to this planet or indigenous to this planet. Like anywhere you go, if you want to go to Africa, if you want to go to China, Asia, if you want to go to Australia, if you want to go to North and South America, we were already there. You know what I'm saying? And I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of years ago. This is evidence, proven. It's a scientific fact. We are the indigenous people of this planet. And the big question I want us to really start asking and get serious on is, where did these white people come from? How is it that we've allowed a race of people for the past few hundred years, because they ain't had that much power for that long. They've only been in power for a few hundred years. How did we let these people come in and take our women away from us, take our culture, take our knowledge, take our tongue from us. How were they able to do this? They knocked us out. Is what happened when you fighting in the war. They came in with a super punch. Oh no, we dropped their board. I don't know what it is, but that's what we need to be asking. Where do white people come from? That's all I got to say.
Indeed. Who wants to answer that, family? Because I think that has context in our discussion. Anybody want to answer that before I give my response?
I might be.
I like it.
Let's let somebody who hasn't had a response yet. If you haven't responded yet, come on in.
I might be totally wrong on this, but this is my belief. The white man was a barbarian, didn't even know how to wash. He goes to Timbuktu in Africa to learn how to read and write. So there are two cultures that he depends on just to learn how to wash and read. One is Africa, and one is China. The Chinese were just one land. They weren't broken up into tribes and what we would call cities or countries. They were just one, under one emperor. So when the Chinese got knowledge of this parasite, they threw him out and they built the wall. The Africans were like the Indians. We were tribal, like American Indians. We were tribal. We were broken down into different zones, different, what we would call cities or countries. And so the white man, being the devil that he is, corrupted each tribe, each city, my brother is mad with my sister over here, each portion, until he could steal and rob, which is what he did to the American Indian. He is a corruption. He is a cancer. And this is why he was able to do what he did. In China, he couldn't, because he couldn't spread his disease from point to point to point, like a virus. But in Africa, he spread it west to north to south, and he just got away with it. He started with just stealing our land and our children, and then he spread and stole our gold, and he's still doing the same thing. And I'll shut up.
Indeed.
Sorry.
No, thank you, Queen. Thank you. Anybody else want to respond to anything that's been said thus far before we move forward?
I would like
I'd like to add something. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is Nicola from Baytown. I hadn't spoken all night.
Come on in, Queen.
I basically just wanted to respond to the whole overall theme of what you were presenting. I want to say thank you for it, because I said before, the last time we had a discussion, I had been in seminary and got my awakening during that time. And I have been very, very connected to spirit, and I've had to work in these realms for a long time where, you know, some people may just see it as a system, but I've definitely dealt with spirit in a very deep level. And so I was just saying that I kept researching down, and in the middle of the night I heard a spirit speak to me and say, Memphite theology. So I started studying Memphite theology, so everything was leading me back to Kemet anyway. So to hear you give such a beautiful explanation of all of this tied together really just did my soul wonder. So I just want to say thank you for that, because it's definitely helped propel my study of where I've already been kind of headed. As far as where the white people were coming from, we were complicit with certain things that allowed them to do what they did to us. So we sometimes look at Africa as if, these invaders just came in. Yes, they did come in very barbarically and take over, but at a certain point, we became complicit in our own demise. And I think until we as Black people start looking at the whole aspect of, okay, what went wrong on our part? How were we weakened to a point where we allowed ourselves to be taken over by these people? We won't get true healing. We have to come out of that ignorance of just looking at them as, we were just so victimized. No, we took place in some things that we need to repent for. We took place in some things that we need to own up to.
What?
Like letting our children get out of hand. Family, we were the parents of humanity. We were the first teachers. Let's go back in time to the very first white civilization. It was a civilization called the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete. They learned everything that they needed to know from the people of Kemet, who were already civilized and had been well established for thousands of years. When the mountain in the middle of the island of Crete exploded, those Minoans fled to the north, and they became the Mycenaean or Mycenaean civilization. And rather than continuing to educate them and keep them as vassals, we dismissed them. Now, of course, Kemet, the great mother and the great teacher, was going through its own tribulations. We were facing onslaught from the empire of Persia, the same empire that was responsible for the rise of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, right? And so we were fleeing to the south. So we were already going through our own wars So we had been pushed further and further south out of Kemet and into Sudan. However, when those people had come, by the time those people came back to us in the year 1500 at the port of Ceuta, right? I'm sorry, specifically 1512, 1514, right? We had forgotten the fact that we were their first teachers. However, we still possessed that knowledge and that level of civilization they didn't possess, and our values had changed, right? Our values had changed. Understanding the enemy that we were dealing with, they were savages. They'd grown up in savagery, right? Even before they came into contact with our Kemetic ancestors, they lived in frozen, barren wastelands. And we can go further back in time, 50,000, 100,000 years ago, 350,000 years ago, and talk about how they got there. We've got to take responsibility for the fact that we were the original teachers of mankind. We've got to relearn what was forgotten and then turn around, each one teach one, and subjugate our bastard and unruly children and bring Mayat back to this planet. That's what we've got to take responsibility for. So for the brothers and sisters sitting out there and they're saying, why does black history matter? We ain't got time for that. We're at war. Why does all this talk about our soul and spirit and Mayat matter? We ain't got time for that. We're at war. Before we can do anything, family, you've got to know what it is. I've always said you got to feed the people before you lead the people, and that feeding is knowledge. If you can feed the people knowledge, you can lead the people with that knowledge. Right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. Then and only then will we start to unify, coalesce into a movement that can take on white supremacy and resubjugate our bastard children and bring this planet back into balance. And by planet, I mean all the peoples on it, including our own. That's what we got to take responsibility for. I'm sorry, Elder, I love you, but I just had to get that off my chest. So I'll go ahead and mute you.
Okay, look, I'm gonna jump in here. See, it seems like things are going this way and that way and this way and that way because from after you started with your 5 parts of the soul, then you said that Christianity and Islam are actually African religions that got whitewashed. So now I'm trying to figure out how we let white folks. I'm kind of mixed up, so I'm kind of confused. So we just went all in all kinds of directions.
You know how we do, family. But the bridge between what was happening. Go ahead, Queen.
I just wanted to add something in, and he brought the brother who was just speaking just brought it right back because I wanted to make a point to answer your question, the very question as to how it is that we allowed those barbarians to come in and undermine our civilization. And to me, the bottom line is, from generation to generation, as you said, brother, we were at war at the same time, trying to fight off a war, and when they were coming in trying to take over. But from generation to generation, we lose some of our connectivity to who we really are, living under Ma'at. Because from one generation to the next, stuff doesn't get taught. And it's still happening to us here in America, in the United States, from one generation to the next, neglect the issue of teaching certain things that we must pass down. And I think this is one of the reasons why this happened. We lost the connectivity to Ma'at and who we are as a people. And so here come these barbarians coming in, and they're more than barbarians. I mean, they're murderers. They're coming in, and that's not who we are. We are loving, spiritual, kind-hearted people. So we can't keep up with the barbarism because we are just not that barbaric, and they come at us and they hit us so hard from so many different directions, we can't deal with it. We're not even prepared to deal with it. We've lost our connectivity to Ma'at, at least 70% of it, probably by the time they came in, and so we don't know how to deal with this anymore. And that's what's happening to us in America and all across the country, all over Africa. We've lost our connectivity.
Thank you, Elder.
And so
I definitely want to open up the floor.
Come in and subdue us.
So indeed, I want to open up the floor to Darren, Deidre, Jamila, Chef, you on every week, Stacy, Jonathan, anybody that we haven't heard from yet. The floor is yours.
Hey, this is Frank in Alabama. I have a question for you, Assad. In regards to the book of Coming Forth by Day, how does that compare, if you've read, to the Egyptian Book of the Dead by E.A. Wallace Budge? How do those two compare?
The beautiful thing about where we are today is that we can build on what was passed down from our ancestors. Our ancestors didn't have the knowledge that we have today, family. Can we all agree on that?
Yes.
Budge didn't have what Ashby had. Ashby's was an evolution on the work of Budge's. It wasn't a negation of his work. It is an evolution of his work. So we can go back and we can still read Budge, and we can go back even further and touch on James. We can go back even further and touch on, I'm trying to think, maybe late 19th century scholars, none are coming to mind. We can go back and we can see how our thought process went from being Eurocentric, having Europeans teach us about ourselves, to saying, you know what, we're going to go back to our source material. And you start to see that transition when Budge came in, right? And now you have something completely innovative coming from Muwata Ashby based on research by people like Dr. Asa Hilliard, right, who's made his transition, so peace be upon him, and other people like Baba Ashra Kwesi, right? Baba James. Absolutely, Sheikh Anta Diop, exactly. Where we go and we say, you know what, we're not gonna hear from somebody who heard from some white folks. We're gonna go over there ourselves and see what's going on. We're gonna do these translations ourselves. So I'm not negating anything that Budge did. It's an evolution. Does that make sense, family?
Yep.
You still read Budge. Still go back into these old scrolls, but as you do so, understand that there are three parts to our evolution as a people. All right, deconstruction, reconstruction, and innovation. In other words, we start deconstructing our condition. That's why these Sunday sessions are so important. We break down exactly how we got to where we are. We deconstruct. Let's break it down. Then we can reconstruct our knowledge with right knowledge, free of miseducation. After we've reconstructed our right knowledge, now we can start to innovate. This is when we move into the future, family. This is when we create new spiritual systems, which we haven't got a chance to talk about. I wanted to talk about Voodoo tonight. I wanted to talk about the Nation of Islam. I wanted to talk about Obeah. I wanted to talk about the 5 percenters. These are innovative spiritual systems, right? The 5 percenters will always say, we're not a religion, we're a philosophy. So be it. Okay, the Nation of Islam is innovative. They tried to innovate, unfortunately, off of Islam. But if you're going to innovate off of anything, you first got to deconstruct your miseducation. Then you've got to reconstruct what you think you know by removing miseducation. And Islam was not meant for us. I told you all, they took what they knew from the African continent and applied it to the Arab culture. And now what are you doing? You're going back to that trough that they set up for themselves and trying to feed yourself spiritually. It won't work. You've got to go back to what you and yours created.
Exactly.
Okay, and so you and yours they created it. Now are you saying that is Ma'at, or is that some other ancestral spiritual religion?
I mean, if we're going to go back to the source, the first and most well-organized and comprehensive spiritual system, you got to go back to Kemet. I'm not saying other spiritual systems didn't exist on the continent. We know they did. But again, we don't have that knowledge. 40 years from now, after we funded more expeditions back to the continent, we may have that knowledge. But right now, that's where we're at. What I want to communicate to you, family, is spirituality and our understanding of it should be evolutionary. It's not static. What they were doing 400 years ago shouldn't be done today. These are different times, and we face a different threat. And we know more. Therefore, we should have grown spiritually over the course of 400 years. King James version notwithstanding, we shouldn't be trying to regurgitate what was being spoken and worked on 400 years ago. We should have built on it. Now, we're at a point now collectively, family, where we can deconstruct these things. We're in the information age. We can reconstruct it with right knowledge because we have access to that research. Only then can we innovate. So what I'm telling you, family, is, yeah, we got to go back to Kemet if we want to truly deconstruct, reconstruct, and innovate. But we shouldn't stay in Kemet.
May I interject?
The floor is yours, family. Actually, we got 5 minutes, so if you could just make it brief, I want to get some closing thoughts from the family. We're going to wrap it up.
I will make it very brief, and just to, kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, and kind of speaking about what it is that you're saying. Basically, there is evidence as well that, Kemetic sciences. See, family, there's pyramids over here in the Americas as well. There's pyramids in North and South America,
That's right.
Specifically Central America. Kemetic sciences, there are higher Kemetic sciences, and very, 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 very similar to African spirituality and African systems, We were very, 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 intertwined with these people. There's hundreds of millions of black people, and temples and just stuff like that. So just doing the research and understand and just look at the similarities to the temples and the belief systems and the calendars, and then look at African spirituality and their systems, and it'll blow your mind. So going off of ancient Kemet, I say, is something very, very, very good to go off of it and just look at the information. That's all I got to say.
I thought Kemet and African spirituality was the same.
Kemet is in Africa. So when we're talking about African spirituality, we're talking about Kemetic science, we're talking about Voodoo, we're talking about Obeah, we're talking about, and of course, Voodoo and Santeria are one and the same. The only difference is the location and a few integrations of Catholicism. We're talking about any spiritual system that you find in the diaspora. That's African spirituality. So Kemet is in Africa, Elder.
Yes. Kemet, African spirituality is all over the world. Everywhere, in any country, in any civilization, in this world, any continent, the Africans, the black people, we were there first. So that's everywhere. And I can prove that to you. And all you have to do is do the research. You can find it for yourself. We started our civilization. So the similarity, my brother, that you were talking about, that you alluded to, that might belong to others, that's us. It is all us. That's why it's so similar. You find the pyramids in Peru. You find them everywhere. You find the colossal heads everywhere. They're in Americas. They're in Peru. They're in Africa. You're going to find us. It's all us.
Oh, indeed. Thank you, Elder. Do we have any closing thoughts before we start wrapping it up for tonight? I do have one special announcement before we end. Go ahead, Jamila. Come on in, Queen.
This is Jamila from Memphis. I just want to reiterate I don't know who said it was a bunch of talking, but with the not passing down, us not teaching and passing down, I think Queen Elder said that. But how it's just so important for us that I think, and I say this all the time, even before I came into consciousness, how our ancestors did a terrible job of passing down and teaching us the struggles of their past. They were so big on trying to protect us and keep us alive that they stopped fighting. It was just like they were so wanting to protect us and make us have such a good life that they didn't educate us on the struggle. I mean, like even we just go to the civil rights, just straight to civil rights, and that's just as far back as that. And how we just completely, the youth of today just completely have no knowledge and not really understanding what the true struggle is. And I think that apparently, based on what the Queen Elder said, going back, that started way back to where we fail in just educating and letting our children know, really just passing down the struggle, understanding what's really going on in reality, and stop protecting them, but training them and preparing them. And so that's all I got to say.
Thank you so much, Queen. Any other closing thoughts before I make this announcement?
Yeah, just Brother Terrell, just want to say, just back to the last question. The Caucasian just lacks a sense of humanity at the end of the day. That's what it boils down to. He has a vertical system while we have a horizontal system. Africans have a horizontal system, meaning that there's always a hierarchy. Instead of them thinking of themselves as one, as on a straight line, they're always looking at it from someone being better than the next. they're always in competition, aka capitalism. The thought of competing with one another instead of working together in solidarity, which has been African since we were in existence. So I would think that their lack of humanity is what caused the downfall. And our sense of humanity with allowing these people and seeing them as human beings and putting that premium on life rather than on money and the resources and the rest of those things. That's what my final opinion is on that.
Thank you so much, family. I want to thank all of you all for being here tonight. I mean, I hope this has been a great conversation. I hope I've given you all some things to research. If you want to take it to the next level, family, I want you to be a part of our United Black America family. I want you to join the movement. I'm going to be doing a live webinar where we can build face-to-face. I want to talk to you all about maybe becoming members. But even if you don't want to become a member of this organization, much of what we talked about and a whole lot more is talked about and built on in our Keys to Consciousness course. I really want you all to take the course. Brother Terrell is taking it. There are a number of other members on here. Jamila's currently taking it. Go to unitedblackamerica.org. Take the course. Give me some feedback. I packed a lot of information. I put my heart, soul, and, the force of the ancestors into that course. So take the course. Give us some feedback, unitedblackamerica.org. I would love to bring you all into the family so we can actually do the work to create the future of Black history. You'll be joining more than 400 members, and, we built something beautiful for you all, family. So I love you all. Thank you all for spending some time with me tonight. I hope I've given you all some value. If I have, let us know on our Facebook page. You can email us directly, info@unitedblackamerica.org. But other than that, I will see you all next Sunday. The system will automatically call you, or we're going to be building on another topic, and we will be on Facebook Live. You have my word, family. I love you all. Thank you all again for being here. Peace.
Love you, brother.
Peace. Love you. Love everybody.
Peace.
I see.